Have you ever felt like you're falling behind in life, and that the moments of your life are just passing you by? Sometimes you look back on the past week, the past month, the past year, and you wonder where it went. I know that feeling well. At various times in my life, I've felt like entire years have just slipped by. And when I think back on them, I don't have much to remember. But I've also felt the opposite. I've also felt like there were years or periods in my life when they were so profoundly full of meaning and experience that they almost feel like a whole decade. You know, the experiences of a decade compressed into a much shorter period of time. I want to talk about how we can change the first into the second, and how anyone who feels stuck might approach becoming unstuck. And just for context, you know, someone who stumbles on this video might be going through a really rough time. Maybe you are dealing with high levels of anxiety or depression, and the idea of just moving out of it can feel insurmountable. It can feel like, you know, sometimes when you're in a really bad place, the trick your mind plays is it tells you that you've always been there and that this is reality and there's no other way of perceiving reality. So I just want to acknowledge that while I'm not feeling that at the moment, I'm actually enjoying this beautiful summer day in Montreal. I have experienced that and I can relate to that. So I think it's important that we come from that recognition that people are at different starting points and there can be different intensities of this feeling we're talking about today. But to begin with, I just want to share a little story about a conversation I had with an old friend. He's actually a childhood friend I've known most of my life. After university, I moved to South Korea and I taught English for almost a year, just outside of Seoul. And that was a huge experience for me. I'd never lived outside Canada. I didn't speak Korean. I didn't know anyone there. I took an enormous leap and I left behind everything I knew. And in many ways, it was a very challenging year, but it was a year that I think back on and it feels memory's strange. I was going to say it feels simultaneously short and long. Because I was a teacher, a lot of time I was just grading papers, I was teaching the same classes, I got into a routine. But also I have amazing memories of hikes that I took in Korea, new friends that I made, and even challenging experiences like ordering from a restaurant for the first time, or, the few words of Korean that I learned. Mikju hana juseyo. That means, like, that's how you order a beer in Korean, by the way. Mikju hana juseyo. It literally means beer one I want. That's how the the sentence structure works. Anyway, you guys don't care about that, but things like that will remain in my memory for the rest of my life because it was so different than anything I'd experienced. And when I returned to Canada, I met up with an old friend of mine, Tim. Shout out to Tim. He'll never see this, but Tim's a good old friend. And, as you do with old friends, we were reminiscing about something from high school. He mentioned some weekend or something that we'd had together, and then I didn't remember it at all. I was like, he mentioned something that someone else said, and I was like, I don't remember that. And he said something that kind of struck me. He said, well, yeah, I'm not surprised. Sounds like you've been out there traveling, having all these experiences. You have new memories, new moments coming in. And in general, a lot of people bring up occasions that I lived through that I don't remember entirely. And it might be because I've been so many places and experienced so many things that Again, maybe I just have a bad memory, but I think there is something about the quantity of experiences you have. Changes. Not just how you remember, but how you perceive time. Because for Tim, and he would admit this too, I'm not talking bad about Tim, it's just, he's talked about this with me many times. He finished high school, he worked a job he didn't enjoy, he did that every single day and it was the same job. And he was a talented guy whose manager did not treat him with the respect he deserved. And Tim was, stuck in that grind, stuck on that treadmill that so many of us have been on in various periods of our life, where every day is the same. As Sublime, the band Sublime, said in one of their songs, light me up that cigarette and I'll put boots on my feet. It's like a worker's anthem. It's like, just give me something to get through this day, because they're all like the other days, and I just need to smoke or drink or get high, because what else is there right now? And when you're in that state of mind of what else is there right now, there literally is nothing else. And that's when the days, the weeks, the months, the years, they just blend together. And even if you have a job that you really enjoy, even if you normally can't relate to that, there was one time you probably could relate to that. And that was during the pandemic, when the world shut down. Because suddenly we all had an experience of seeing what it's like when every day really does feel the same. And at first it's exhausting, and I remember the first couple of days of that lockdown felt like they lasted forever. Because it was so new. We'd never experienced something like that. Every day it was like, what's the news? What's happening? When's this going to end? But when you realize it wasn't going to end for a very long time, then every day becomes the same. Then you stop putting pants on, you stay in your sweatpants for, it feels like 6 months. And you're like, you wake up, it's like, oh, the season changed. What happened? What happened is you got stuck in that loop. What happened is you got stuck in your life. And the moment started to slip on by. But what can we learn from that? What can we learn by this astute observation that Tim made about the nature of experiences and that time during COVID that we all experienced? Well, I would say that the answer, as obvious as it might seem, is just to have new experiences. New experiences, not just to, replace those old experiences. It's not just about forgetting about high school or whatever, though that can be helpful, by the way, if you're stuck in a negative thought loop, a breakup, a divorce, a traumatic experience of any kind. New experiences can eventually make it so you don't forget entirely about that trauma, but it's pushed to the back. Certain things might trigger you to remember it, but it's so far back there now that you are not obsessing over it, as is sometimes the case. But in general, whether you're trying to get unstuck from a moment, whether you're just trying to experience more and slow down your life, I think new experiences can do that. Because those new experiences help you to slow down time. And again, it's hey. That moment just slowed down time for a moment. Forgot all about the video and just focused on the dog, who just ran up and said hello. Maybe that dog was showing me you found it. You found the secret. I'm gonna give you a little lick on your hand, which he did actually. Just to let you know you found it. New experiences. Somehow dogs, even though their days probably are pretty much the same, they always keep the joy of new experiences. Maybe that's another level to this. if you are stuck. I mean, you know, you can't all quit your job and move to South Korea like I did. But you can become intently aware of the beauty of the parks around you, or something that had become routine, a way you've become stuck. Even if we're like Tim and you have a boss who doesn't respect you, you know, you can, maybe you can shift your attention to the clients, you know, the people who you're helping, the people you're working with, and how they might respect you. They might treat you nice and be like, oh, that person I was working with was nice today, even if the boss who cuts my check wasn't. You shift your attention. You get unstuck. And eventually, I believe, this might sound like some pseudoscience or whatever, but I truly believe that it changes how you perceive time. Time itself slows down when you fill it with more experiences. If you're at home watching 12 hours of Netflix, that day is going to fly by, especially if you do that every day. But if you give yourself 6 things to do, you're like, I'm going to go to the gym, and then I'm going to do this business call, and then I'm going to go to this concert with friends. Oh, and then it's a birthday party, I got to stop by here. Oh, and then I'm going to do this, then I'm going to do that, then I'm going to do this. If it's such a busy day that it seems impossible, somehow the time will appear. Somehow time will play tricks where it's like, oh, you might be 5 minutes late to one thing, or, you know, but somehow that same period of time, which seemed so short before, will stretch, and somehow you'll be able to fit more activities into it, more experiences, more life. I really think getting older, getting stuck in your ways, is a choice that we make. And usually we make it because everyone around us is getting stuck. Everyone around us stops listening to new music past a certain age, stops going to new places, stops believing new things, or having conversations with strangers in the park or something like that. But it's a choice. You can make it or you cannot. The consequence of that choice, in my opinion, is the difference between a life well lived and a life where you're stuck remembering the same few memories from your childhood, obsessing over them, wishing things had been different. That's not a life I want. That's not a life that you want either. And even my friend Tim, he's since changed jobs, changed cities. I haven't met up with him in a while, but I have a feeling he's also on a new path. And if you're resonating with any of this, you can be on a new path too. And I wish you well. It's not easy. It's truly the work of a lifetime. But I think you can get there.